Hi everyone in my 7 subscribers club. I do not have many subscribers right now. I'm hoping to gain more, but I do appreciate the subscribers that I do have. If you found my channel and haven't subscribed, please feel free to do so. I'd really appreciate it. Should Donald Trump concede the election? This is something that's discussed. Of course, it's discussed in the media, but I'm seeing a lot of social media posts, including from Donald Trump voters, people who voted for Donald Trump. I'm seeing it from Christians and other demographic groups that tend to support Donald Trump. I'm seeing kind of a tone that we should congratulate Joe Biden, congratulate Kamala Harris, and concede the election and pretty much not be spoiled losers type thing. And I think there's some valid points there. But if in fact there is voter fraud going on, what would that mean if we concede the election and Joe Biden wins? What would that mean for our democracy? If there was enough voter fraud where Donald Trump could win and Joe Biden wins anyway, what does that say for our democracy? Do we have a democratic system anymore? On the flip side, what's going to happen if Donald Trump does end up winning these court cases? If some of these votes that are being contested, as an example, in Pennsylvania, I think it's 450,000. In Michigan, I think it's 300,000 votes or something that the Trump campaign is alleging that were improperly counted. And there's also all kinds of sworn affidavits saying that people witness certain activities. There's a whole bunch of things, and it's not inconsequential. There are actual people that saw the things that took place, and it's hard to argue that the vote was carried out correctly and according to the law. In Pennsylvania, you have countless examples in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia where the votes were not witnessed by somebody on the Republican side. Even though they tried to have witnesses there, they were pushed aside. There's all kinds of videos with the same type of thing in Michigan. There's sworn affidavits from people saying that votes were run through twice, that people are just filling out applications. There's all these votes in these areas that are for Joe Biden only. Joe Biden's the only name that is filled out on the application. I think it's around 100,000 in both Michigan and Pennsylvania, something like that, where Joe Biden was the only person that was voted for, which is interesting. Somebody would probably vote for other candidates, right? Or do a straight ticket, something. So that's very fishy. So there's a lot of irregularities that need to be looked at. And as I said in a recent video, maybe all of these things are nothing. But if we concede the election and we say, oh, we're just going to not worry about those, we're just going to say, okay, Joe Biden, you won, without knowing whether or not the fraud was done and what kind of impact it had on the election. If the race is conceded and Joe Biden ends up being president, will we ever be able to trust the integrity of our election? It is something that really needs to be pondered carefully. I don't think it's as easy as, oh, well, Joe Biden's ahead, let's concede. There were things done in Pennsylvania, as an example, that were not following the law. In Pennsylvania, the legislature is in control of the election, and the governor decided to make up their own rules. But that's not the way the election should be run. They extended the timeline, and then when they were counting the votes, they were not counted legally. They had Republican witnesses but they were between 12 and 150 feet away from the ballots. How can you see anything? What's the point of even having them there when they can't vote by vote verify that things are being done correctly? There should be a counter, and then there should be a witness from one side and a witness from the other side on every ballot. That's the way it should be done. Now we have all these ballots that were counted that way. They're separated from the address, from the envelopes that they came in. So they're just ballots now. There's no way of verifying whether or not they're correct, whether or not the person was a registered voter. So what do you do with those? You could say, oh, you could do a recount, but how do you know they're legit? And it would be, on the one hand, very bad if the majority of those are legitimate votes and they didn't get their voice heard. But on the other hand, how do you know that they're legitimate votes? There's a legal system in place to ensure the integrity of the election, and that system, those rules were not followed. There were no witnesses for a high number of votes in Pennsylvania. I've seen figures at 680,000, 450,000. I don't know how many it is, but it's a lot. And then Michigan's the same thing. I've heard from people that were at the polls in Michigan. I'm from Michigan. And there were all kinds of irregularities going on. What do you do? It's an interesting thing to contemplate, because even if the amount of fraud that took place isn't enough to overturn the election, I think we need to get to the bottom of what went on, and anybody who took part in voter fraud should be held accountable. So whether or not Trump concedes the election to Biden, this needs to be done. All of these voter fraud allegations need to be looked into. And I think there's enough discrepancy in the votes. You look at what happened in Michigan and Wisconsin in the middle of the night. You have the trend lines of Joe Biden and Trump kind of moving alongside. Trump is ahead, Trump is ahead. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, you get a whole bunch of votes and a straight up line, and then Biden is ahead. Now, could it be that Biden really got all of those votes? It's possible. But it was, I think, almost 100% Biden, just in a straight up line. Statistically speaking, it does not seem probable. It seems very improbable that that would happen. So that needs to be looked into, and I think it needs to be addressed and explained very clearly what went on. I think there's enough questions in all of these states, and the votes are close enough where not doing a recount and not looking into all of these allegations would be a huge disservice to the American people and a huge disservice to those who died for our country and who died for our freedoms, and a huge disservice to our democracy. The integrity of the election has to be 100%. And going around on Facebook talking about how wonderful our election is isn't going to make it an accurate election. It isn't going to get rid of the fraud. It isn't going to get rid of the allegations. Facebook and Twitter removing everything, putting their little disclaimers next to everything, saying that, oh, our elections are very secure. That's not going to fix these allegations. That's not going to fix what happened in Philadelphia. That's not going to fix what happened in Michigan. That's not going to fix the fact that in Nevada, out-of-state people voted when they weren't supposed to. It's not going to fix any of those things. So just ignoring the problem is an un-Christian thing to do. It's an un-American thing to do. As an American, I would say it is our duty to make sure the election is 100% accurate. And all of these people who were involved in any kind of voter suppression, voter fraud, inaccurate counting of the votes, suppression of poll watchers, suppression of having a transparent process in counting the votes. So Should Trump concede? No. Until all the legal votes are counted, until all of these election potential fraud issues are looked into, examined, Trump should not concede the election. Now, if all the legal votes are counted and these discrepancies are accounted for, and Biden still isn't the lead, then he should definitely concede the election. And he will concede the election. And Biden will become the next president. But all of these people who are saying Trump should concede the election, he's being a sore loser, they need to ask themselves a question. Do you want an election where there's so many questions about the voter, the integrity of the vote, when there's so many questions about fraud? Do you want that to just get a free pass? Do you want that for our democracy? I think every American should want every vote to count, but every legal vote to count. There's a process in place. You don't go to a Super Bowl game and see them changing rules in the middle of the football team. And that's what happened in Pennsylvania when they changed the rules at the end of the whatever it was in October. You have the game played with a referee. And the referee is there for a reason. And when the vote is counted, you need to have referees watching the process. You need to have people from both sides watching the process. That is the American thing to do. If you don't have that, there's always going to be a question about whether or not our elections have integrity, whether or not our elections are accurate. And until that question is addressed, there's still going to be 70 million people in the country who think that maybe, just maybe, the election was stolen. And we don't want that. The Democrats and the media, they talk about, oh, let's get together, unity. That's great. I'm all for unity. But you're not going to encourage unity when you suppress any questions about the integrity of the election. The integrity of the election results need to withstand friction. They need to withstand questioning. The system needs to be set up in such a way that everything can be verified. Everything can be transparent. And it's not transparent when Facebook and the media, including Fox News, Neil Cavuto, I used to like watching Neil Cavuto. I'm not going to watch Neil Cavuto anymore after he did that with Kayleigh McEnany. She had a press conference, and instead of allowing that to play, he cuts in and says, oh, I'm not going to allow this because it's questioning the integrity of the election or something, whatever. It's unconscionable that the media is doing this. There's all these postal workers that are saying, there's been several of them, and they've had sworn affidavits saying this, that they were told to backdate any ballots coming in to the 3rd so that they could be counted, which is illegal. It's against the law. Do we not investigate those? Do we just let them get by? Why doesn't the media talk about those? It undermines the credibility of these media companies. Instead of saying, okay, that looks like something that needs to be looked into. Look into it. Okay, it affected 130 votes. That's, no vote should be affected by fraud. But whatever, let's say it affected 130. It's not enough to overturn the election. But whoever was doing that should be held accountable, and that should never happen again. But just sweeping it under the rug is just going to make it happen more. Just sweeping it under the rug is going to make what happened in Pennsylvania and Michigan, where they're not allowing proper review of the votes, where they're not allowing proper bipartisan verification of the votes. It's just going to happen again. And we'll no longer have confidence in our elections. And it's not because people are questioning it. It's because people aren't questioning it. If you want integrity in elections, you need to question it. You need to question it. The integrity of the election needs to withstand friction. It needs to withstand a review. And it's not going to give anybody any confidence to just keep suppressing any questions, suppressing free thought, suppressing free speech, is not going to establish integrity in the election. And Facebook putting their little disclaimer and Twitter putting their little disclaimer about how wonderful our elections are, it's not going to create a feeling that our elections are secure and our elections are 100% accurate. It's just not. And that's why so many people now, they're trying to leave Facebook for MeWe or for Parler. People are even leaving Fox. Fox's ratings were terrible. Why? Because they're falling in line with the other liberal media companies and trying to do what they're doing rather than sticking with what made them strong in the first place. Sticking with the conservative message. People are leaving Fox and they're going to Newsmax in great numbers. And it's because Fox is doing the same thing that Facebook, Twitter, CNN, CNBC, whatever, all these other media companies, the New York Times, suppress any questions on the integrity of the election. Instead of saying, our election results are so good, we can question them and it will withstand the questioning. That's what we should be doing. So, no, Trump should not concede the election. We should not congratulate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris until we are certain that only legal votes are counted and we're certain on the integrity of the election. Let me know your thoughts. I'm trying to grow this channel. I don't know who's listening to me, but I know I have 7 subscribers, so thank you for subscribing. If you're new, please hit the subscribe button. Please like this video and comment on it. It will help with the YouTube search algorithms. I would really like to get a pretty good following with this channel. We'll see what happens. I am passionate about politics. I'm passionate about our country. I'm also passionate about business. I'm probably going to do some videos on politics and its effect on business, that kind of thing. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.